Okay, so let's talk BOLA. Last time we focused a lot on the basics. We talked about IDOR specifically quite a bit. And I want to dive back in where we left off and start there because I want to move into as we go what I wanted to touch on last time but ran out of time for, which is kind of some of the more complexities of BOLA. And it's not always as simple as just an IDOR. But when you have something as simple as an IDOR, it's extremely easy to automate testing with APIsec. So let's show what that looks like. First thing you're going to need is obviously you need two credentials, right? I've actually gotten everything set up ahead of time today. So I have my BOLA user and I have this ghost user here. These are peers within Crappy. And we're going to set up a BOLA scenario right now. So
And
first,
just sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
for folks, for anyone who I'm gonna leave this link up in the top right. If you wanna, like, start playing around with this tool yourself, you can, it's free. Go to this website. There's a little link in the top right, set up free account. So just wanted to make sure folks who are interested in playing around with this, they know where to go.
yeah, absolutely. So to give just a tiny bit of context before I dive in here, I'm using APIsec hooked to Crappy, this application here. This is the user that I'm logged in with, or the credentials that I just showed you in APIsec, right? So you can connect those dots. So let's see what a BOLA scenario looks like using this user. We're going to name this select, or we'll call it vehicle location, because that's what we're testing.
And
We're going to,
Mike, I'm gonna keep
go ahead.
interrupting you. I
Yeah, no,
apologize,
please
dude.
do.
Some good questions in there, Mike. I'm keeping your question handy. We'll bring that up. Um, we'll bring that up a little bit later about the logs. But so, folks, I'm keeping an eye on these questions. We'll definitely try to get through them as many as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is, I don't know if you guys notice, I believe in chat there's a Q&A tab. So if you have like a specific question you'd really like answered, please use the Q&A tab and put your question over there so we can be sure that we get to it. Is that how that works, Dan, or do we have to move stuff
You
over
know
there?
what? You can do that. We actually pay more
Okay.
attention to the regular chat.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just annoying that we have to flip back and forth. So,
Totally understand. Okay. Well,
oh, the
scratch that,
link is not
everybody.
clickable. What the hell?
Not clickable?
It works for me.
Oh,
That's
weird. Me
weird.
too.
You guys can't click the. I'll stick it in here just so folks can access it.
APIsec.ai. You can click this get free account button here in the corner. Super easy to get started. I'll put it in chat too. Okay. Let's talk BOLA. So first thing you need in this scenario is we need like an actual resource that we're testing for. In this case, as I said, we're looking at a vehicle location, which is going to take a vehicle ID, which I happen to have handy. Is this the right one? Nope. So I know that my BOLA user owns this vehicle ID that I've just pasted in. Right? I have that knowledge going in here. So I'm going to select my BOLA user as the resource owner. And the scope is that it should only be accessible to the owner. So now every time that we run a scan with this scenario, what's going to happen is it's going to verify that only the BOLA user gets a 200 response when trying to get the location of this vehicle. Right? So let's go here. Where are you? Test this endpoint. Click test scenario. And it's going to load up here in just a second. And we get a status ready. So this means that as long as we enable it by clicking this button here, every time that we run a scan, APIsec is going to automatically verify that what I just told you is true, that the correct users have the correct access. So let's run a scan really quick. And while that's going, Dan, we can talk chat a little more.
Yeah, there was a question about it was from Michael Wu about the multiple log columns. So when we run a test, right? It
Hmm.
could actually have more than one test. It could have 5, 10, 20 different actual tests.
Sure. Yeah, let's look at that really quick. I can actually show a quick example while we wait for the scan to run. So after you've run a scan, what I just quickly did is navigated to the scan history and clicked on an older scan that I ran in this application on this tenant, right? Um, if we look at our test execution summary page, we can see all of the different endpoints that were hit, and if we open them up, which categories were successfully run and which were skipped. Oftentimes, when it's skipped, it's because it doesn't apply to the endpoint in question, right? Like you can't inject something into an endpoint that has no input, so that would skip. And when you look at your dry run logs, the reason for these multiple logs is because we we want to get a good understanding of how the API is working and responding, right? We want to see how it responds with the token. We want to see how it responds without the token. You can see this log, my token just disappeared, right? And that helps the application understand if the endpoint is responding appropriately with all the different pieces in place. Once it's confirmed that yes, it's using the correct authorization headers, yes, it's getting the correct ID so that we can get a proper response, then, and even if, when I say proper, that doesn't have to be a 200, right? If you're hitting an authenticated endpoint as the user without access, you're going to get a 401, and that's appropriate, and we can determine that. So yeah, this is like your sea of information, right, to determine all of those different little pieces. And then once tests actually start running, you can click on those test categories themselves to start seeing changes in these dry run logs based on the category you're running. And then, of course, when you come back to the actual application and are doing that here, it's kind of the same thing, right? But the difference is you also see your test log when you
Yeah, so
actually
what's
have a
interesting is
finding.
like when we run a test, it actually may be dozens of subtests,
Yeah.
right? So there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of like magic that's going on behind the scenes just to make sure your APIs get fully tested.
Right. So we ran that scan, and look what we have here in our threat categories now. Broken object level authorization shows the endpoint that we just set up, right? And if we click here, we can actually see, hey, Ghost had access to this, and you said that he wasn't supposed to. He got a 200.
That's
It
wild.
returned the data, right? So what's the practice of this in an organization? Well, this is one example, but what happens when you have 1,000 different parameters like this in your API that you need to test and 12 different levels of role access? How long do you think it takes a team or individual person to run all that through Postman and Burp? It's time consuming, right? So by setting these sorts of things up and doing them automatically, you can one, test it with every single release that you're pushing all year round. So you're not relying on once a year or once a quarter or whatever the schedule of your red team is. You're getting this level of coverage continuously. For enterprise orgs, if there are any in the audience, you can integrate into your CI/CD pipeline and do things like break builds. If this finding happened in the middle of a new build that's being scanned, it would break your build and not allow it to go to prod. We can do all sorts of stuff like that. It's really impressive, right? Um, okay, so that's an example of what it looks like scanning automated, right? That particular example wasn't a simple IDOR because I used a unique vehicle ID, but you get the idea where it's a simple parameter, right? In most cases, we talk about IDORs where it's like an order ID maybe that's incrementing 1, 2, 3, 4, and you change it from 4 to 1, and you're able to look at somebody else's stuff. But it gets a lot deeper than that.
Hey, real
Um,
quick, let
yeah,
me just touch on a couple questions
yeah,
while
yeah.
I got
Before I
'em
move
here.
on, let's do that.
Yeah, so from Randall, do you feed the Swagger file into the app or does it make one for itself? So a
You
little bit of
feed,
like, how does one get
yeah.
started here?
So you do need a Swagger file or OAS to onboard. That's like step one, right? We need a map of some kind because what the technology behind the scenes is doing is looking at that map and crafting sophisticated attack scenarios. So without the map, it's a little bit harder to do that, right? That being said, if you don't have a map, there are tons of tools out there. We help customers all the time with creating that map, so no worries.
Yeah, and the other one, from Mike Wu, another question. When you guys use the APIsec scanner, do you still have a need for Postman when doing tests?
Well, I think that depends on your org, right? For some, AppySec is enough. You let it do its thing. It checks the boxes. Maybe it's because of the size of your application or your whatever the constraints for compliance for you are. It's enough. For some people, they want AppySec and a once a year manual pen test, right? And they use AppySec as like they can hand that to those pen testers, or they can hand our reports to those manual pen testers and say, hey, here's what we already know, right? And save
Right.
them a bunch of time.
Well, I
So
think what you'll see in the power user course is like Corey uses this scanner because when he walks into a new engagement, he's like, I want to like blanket this API and
right.
see what kind of alerts fire out of it. Now I know where I'm going to focus more of my attention, right? But sitting there and like if you got a 50, 100 endpoint API and dozens of different attack vectors. Like now you're like, how are you going to craft 5,000 tests? It's not
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
Right. And so it doesn't mean you don't use Postman anymore. I'm sure Corey uses it plenty, but like this is your way to like really cover your API across a lot of very sophisticated scenarios And then, of course, make it continuous, right? Not just a point in time test, right? But, make it schedule it so it runs every night or wire it into your CI/CD.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
And to Dave's point, like, you don't just need the Swagger file, right? Postman collection works, API gateway works, GraphQL SDL file works, and we're adding more and more options every single month, I feel like.
yeah. And it's great to have Dave back here. Maybe Dave, you could comment on Eric's comment here as well. But I don't want to derail you here, Jess.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. It sounds like we're gonna have to do just like a product webinar like this, Dave, where maybe I'll drag, or Dan, geez, all the D names you guys give me, where we drag Dave along with us and he can help answer some of these questions. That might be good.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk a BOLA a little bit more. Let's move into my slides here. Hold on. Back it up. All right. BOLA part 2, more than an IDOR. All right. What we're going to be talking about today, what we're focusing on, expanding your hacker mindset, okay, around BOLA. How are we thinking about BOLA? What does BOLA mean? How do we hunt for it? How do we document it? Right? And what does it mean to expand your scope on BOLA? Well, how many different ways can you imagine an object? Let's start there, right? Because BOLA is broken object level authorization. And objects can be extremely complicated depending on application architecture. For example, you can have one object that has 6 values in it, and all 6 of those are objects themselves that have 10 plus values in them, right? And maybe some of those are nested objects. And maybe the vulnerability is on one of the values on one of those double nested children, right? And that value doesn't necessarily need to be like accessible just by an ID. Maybe it's a file path. Maybe it's a at the org level or a location level, right? And I don't want to give too many of those examples away because a big part of what I want to do today with you guys is actually interact with the audience and ask you some questions about BOLA. Later on, we're going to jump into a bug bounty program and actually look at a program live in Burp Suite and examine kind of the things that we're seeing, right? And my goal there, when we get there, is helping people that want to start doing this sort of thing get through the early roadblocks, right? Understand how to focus yourself in your hunt and how to document yourself along the way so that you're set up for success, both in your reporting after you find something and in your actual hunting. All right. What we're not going to be focusing on is finding an actual bug. That's not the goal today. Today is going to be very recon centric, right? Also, a magician never reveals their secrets. We're not going to be focusing on vulnerabilities other than BOLA. And we're not going to be focusing on how badly I need a haircut. All right. My barber's out of town and I'm loyal. So we're just going to have to deal with that. Okay. Let's move on to some HTTP, hypothetical text transfer protocol. That's not the actual thing. Maybe somebody in chat can tell me what HTTP actually stands for. As a nice little icebreaker, easy question. But
I think
this
even I
is the
know the
first.
answer to that one.
Yeah, that's a low hanging fruit. Um, this is a hypothetical HTTP request based on a story that was given to me by none other than Corey Ball about a real penetration test that he did very recently. Okay, so the bait here for him was the UUID and the URL, right? Like anybody, just like the one that we just saw with that vehicle UUID, right? Immediately it alerted him like there might be something going on here, right? He saw the opportunity for header surgery. I'll get into that later, right? And he saw once he started examining it and seeing like, oh, there's extra IDs in the header, user IDs, customer IDs. There's opportunity for enumeration here, right? Hypertext. Yeah, good job, everybody. Especially with EDE. Who can guess what EDE is? That's another little poll I have for you guys because EDE, if you know what it stands for, is uh, the best friend to BOLA, I would argue, for a hacker.
I have no idea. Never heard of EDE before.
It's just a little acronym for something that we've all heard a bunch of times.
Hmm. Uh,
Giving the chat a second because I know I got a tiny bit of a
extracted
delay.
data
You're close.
extraction.
You got the D.
I don't know. Anyone on the chat have a clue?
Yeah, I'm gonna let this one hang for just a sec, just so I can see what my delay is here and get an idea for that.
I don't think anyone knows what it is.
No idea. Excessive data exposure. There we
Oh
go,
man.
Julius. Thank you. Yes. Excessive data exposure is the best friend to BOLA because without it, sure, you could enumerate these numbers and you can enumerate these numbers and try to find a combination that works. But with excessive data exposure, you get a whole bunch of numbers that you know work, and then or maybe you get half, right? Maybe you get the customer but not the user through excessive, and then that cuts your enumeration time in half. We're thinking about how to most efficiently beat our head against the wall here, right? Break through that brick wall with as many slams as possible is the idea. The other interesting thing about this piece is that the authorization token is present, but for Corey, what he found is that it actually didn't restrict authorization. So here's how this all worked together, you guys. Corey found this, and then in another piece of his test, he had an excessive data exposure, right? And using that, he was able to figure out that as long as these two IDs matched each other, you were authorized. Even though this bearer token is here, he could completely remove this token. And as long as these two fields worked together, he could access any authenticated endpoint in the entire application.
This is in a real life pen
This is in
test?
a real life pen test in a real application that somebody is trying to sell and put to market. Right. So that's what I'm trying to like drive home here for people is there are devs out there that are new. There are devs out there that are inexperienced, right? And they build these things and they need help keeping up with them in a testing capacity. And that's like what pen testers are there for, to make sure their applications stay secure. But yeah,
Mhm.
no, this is a real app. And then the funny sidebar, he was able to find I think he said it was either the CISO or the CEO's credentials through the excessive data exposure through this same attack vector. Eventually got control of the CEO's account, added himself as a user to their SSO, and just did all kinds of fun stuff. And then he got to bring that to that same person and be like, "Hey, this is what I found." So really, really fun for him.
So
But
so the app was not relying on the authorization token at the end of the day.
exactly,
It was
exactly,
it
and
was
that's
relying on like, if you had a valid customer ID, user ID,
yep,
that was enough?
yep. And here's my crowd question: why do you think that is? What could possibly happen during the development of an app that would cause something so egregious to happen? Right? These sorts of questions that I'm asking right now, having good answers to these questions and creative answers to these questions is an outstanding exercise for expanding your hacker mindset. Could static analysis detect this, Eric? Probably, potentially, depending on how it's handled in the code and what the reason for it is. Absolutely. Um,
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I'm just thinking back, um, like, we know, as developers, right, we do things that make it easier to develop, right?
mhm,
Easier to test, easier to code. And some
mm,
of that stuff can create flaws or logic gaps or things like that.
100%, man. One thing that I see a lot from developers is myself included. No, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, not ever in a paid scenario, but when I'm working on my little video game projects that I do on the side, you find shortcuts for testing, man. Like, let's say that when he's trying to test this token expires every 2 minutes. Do you think he wants to go fetch a new token every 2 minutes while he's trying to test a new feature, or was it easier for him to just hard code some IDs in real quick while he tests? And then maybe he forgot to take them out. Create a backdoor. Yep, that's it right there. That's the short version of exactly what I just described.
Hmm.
Yeah, it could have been easier validation for a new dev who didn't know what they were doing, right? And then they added the token later and forgot to take the other piece out. Another great idea. Um, the value that confirms successful auth was stored statically. MC, you're gonna have to elaborate for me there. Uh, more complex system. Yeah, yeah. Exactly, guys. You guys are getting my point here, right? Like there are it's a lot more complicated than simply enumerating an ID. This is broken object level authorization, right? He was hitting an object, right? He eventually took it further, but this started with him going after a specific ID, a specific object on this user's profile. And then he found that he could get that object here by changing these values, the customer ID and the user ID. All right. So let's talk about how he did this, right? What were his steps? He finds this HTTP request, but now what the heck do I do? Like, how do I actually play with this using the excessive data that I have to figure out what I figured out? Right. Well, that's all part of developing your methodology. And I like to call this, Corey likes to call this peeling how to peel an onion. Peeling it applications have layers, right? When you look at an HTTP request, effectively a collection of layers. And most applications don't need all of those layers to work. So as a hacker, as a pen tester, when you find interesting things like this, just start doing header surgery. Well, all Corey did was, "Oh, what happens if I remove this? What happens if I remove the session token? What happens if I remove the bearer token? What happens if I remove just the customer ID? What happens if I remove the bearer token and the user ID?" Right? And he goes and enumerates through all of these different combinations of headers. Sidebar, if you want to do this, there's tools to help. But he goes through and does that and eventually lands on, oh my God, I don't need my bearer token. Right? There you go. So as he's going, it just gets shorter and shorter, and eventually he cut it down to like example 3 here, where it was like, "Oh my god, I really just need my content type in these 2 values, and I can get whatever I want." Those were the only key pieces for authorization, right? The authorization layer is built up of many layers within this header request. That's only one piece of the application.
Wow.
And this surgery header process automated with BOLA. If you're referring to APIsec in the product, we do a whole bunch of header stuff. That's a great question. We definitely need to get Dave on here. I think the answer is yes, but I don't know how to describe the details behind the scenes yet.
Yeah, we're due to have Dave on one
Yeah.
of these sessions. We
I
definitely
love
gotta
when
do that.
people ask me questions I don't know the answer to, man. Like not knowing and having something to go learn is one of my favorite feelings. So
Yeah.
thank you, Adam, for that question. Um,
Header elimination technique. I love that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I call it header surgery, whatever you want, man.
So the idea is you start with the whole request and then you start trimming away bits and see if the request still works.
Exactly, and it's not limited to just the header, it's the body too, pieces of the body, and then also adding, you can inject other things like it's content type, application JSON, what happens if I change it to something else, right? There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different mutations that you can do here. There's hundreds and hundreds probably, maybe even thousands exponentially that you could.
Well, that's what's so sort of interesting, and maybe I'll just like take a little aside here, right? You can see like the creativity of an attacker is infinite, and the coverage that you as a defender have to think about is it has to match, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's why tools like this just need to keep evolving and growing to like have more of that logic built in. And I know we have sort of informal programs, but like I'm sure Jess, we're going to make them more formal, but like we want to learn from you all in the community to like
totally,
continue to enhance the scanner, right? So that it stays up on all of these new techniques and these new attack vectors that folks have. So, stay tuned, right? Hey, Bill, um, we're gonna probably formalize some sort of way that you can contribute to this attack knowledge base, if you will, right? So that we can make
absolutely.
this as effective and comprehensive as possible.
Yeah, totally something. I mean, like you said, it's already something that's in place that we formalize more and more every day and try to find ways to recognize people for. So yeah, totally echo that. Awesome. Um, okay. So what are we on time? Half an hour mark. Beautiful. That's right where I want to be. Okay. So a couple of little things I just want to mention as we move a little further. Oh, let me answer this question first. I apologize if I butcher this name. Darren Sola asked, with some integrity checks, or was there some integrity checks within this authorization layer? If no, would having it in place have curbed this from going through? Uh, there might have been, but it was missing a key one, which is saying, hey, don't let them have it if they don't have their bearer token, right? Like that's the most basic integrity check that should be in place before you even check the validity of the token. Make sure that it's there. Um, but
And
yeah,
and I'll jump in on from Anthony. This is a question we get a lot, right? Is this not a great reason why traffic should be encrypted? Your traffic should be encrypted, but I don't think it's going to make a difference here,
hmm,
right? This is coming from the endpoint, right? From the client, right? Corey is issuing these requests. He's not sniffing traffic and finding these things. He's actually creating the request, right? Examining
yeah.
his request, modifying the request. So it's pre-encryption. Am I right, Jess?
Yeah, exactly. And Dave's answer to Adam is great. There are layers in how BOLA can be tested. You can guess other user IDs, UUIDs, you can find other UUIDs and requests, etc. This is closer to the pen tester workflow. You can also be super targeted by inventorying the ownership of two users, which I'm about to talk about, and then assuming their authenticated roles and trying to cross-pollinate. We see this more when application security teams or development teams are building apps. Yeah, exactly. Right? Like go in create 2 accounts, make all of the different resources, and analyze your traffic and your own stuff within your own profile to figure out what all of those values should be. Real examples of the values you're trying to guess. Right. And then this is also for safety too, right? Especially if you're out on bug bounty programs, don't be just trying to get into people's data. Make 2 accounts and try to access your own data so that if you succeed, you're not actually compromising anyone, but you're still able to report your vulnerability. And then also just never brute force IDs that might belong to real users. Never a good idea. Just don't do
Yeah.
it. I'll talk a little bit more about things not to do and to do here in just a sec when we actually dive in. Okay. Now I have some examples for the audience, and I just want to see if you guys can maybe guess a few of these, right? So, where do you see opportunity for BOLA vulnerabilities in this URL? If you're a hunter and you're going through somebody's API and this pops up in Burp Suite and pings your brain, right? And you're looking for vulnerabilities, what about this could be changed? What can we do here?
You got me stumped on that one. I don't see an
Hmm.
ID. I see Acme Corp.
Yeah, Acme Corp. That's a good idea. We could change that to different organizations, right? Maybe if we Google this company, we can see all of their different customers and get a list of or some of their customers, right? Like what does their
Ah,
banner look like? Oh, we like to do it, right? Oh, these people use us. Okay, well, those are all now organizations that I can guess in this URL
yeah.
and see if you have data, see if I can get data there. Change the year. Yep. Change the year, change the quarter, 100%. What does this data look like from a year ago? Is the authorization a year ago the same as it is now? Right? Like
You know what's
companies.
interesting? You're reminding me of something related, but slight aside. We were doing a test for a client. This was our buddy Alex Riffman, and they found incremental IDs. Right now, there was no BOLA. Right, they couldn't
Mhm,
access anyone else's ID or anyone else's info, but they
right.
could monitor the incremental ID and see where it petered out. And what that revealed was their customer growth rate. Right,
Ooh,
and
interesting.
they were able to see, like, is this company accelerating? Are they flatlining?
Ooh.
Are they decline? Like, I guess you couldn't tell declining, but just simply by making the incremental ID visible,
Mhm.
right? You could infer things about that company's health, right? Imagine if it was a publicly traded company. That's material, non-public information, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of how people monitor the Pentagon based on how many pizzas are being ordered there, right? Like they know if there's an operation going on. This happened last week. Um, they could tell, like the Washington Post could tell the Pentagon was up to something because there was this surge of pizza orders. So, anyways, just an example of how these
Yep.
IDs can be revealing in ways you don't expect.
Yeah, totally. And then version's another one, right? What is there a V2? Is there a V3? Is there a version?
Oh yeah,
Are they old enough that they didn't even have versions and I can just take this part of the path out completely? Who knows? Here's another one, right? Kind of the same thing, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's obvious. Doc ABC 1 through 3, interesting. What else do we see? What other possibilities? Because is this right? And here's questions. Is this the name of the document or is this a type of document ID indicating to the application owners that maybe this is like maybe pen testing reports are doc ABC 123. Maybe marketing stuff is doc XYZ 456, right? So accessing different objects within the company by changing the path. Is it only documents? Yeah, doc name, AFN, exactly. Is it only documents? Are there notes in here? Is there meetings? Is there agendas? Right? You can do things like pass this to Claude and say, hey, Claude, what might an organization use other than just documents for this URL that I could try? Right? And AI will give you a fat list of stuff that kind of makes sense. Looks like hey, Habib, welcome, man. Good to see you. Uh, Fuzz file names. Yep. File names exactly. 789 might be enumeratable. Maybe there's a file XYZ 788. Maybe there's a file ABC. Right? We'll keep going on here. Branches, right? New York City can change. Employees, all right. What about customers? Yeah, all attachments. Yeah, exactly. You could just try hitting the attachments endpoint by itself, seeing if you get everything. You could try doing a slash all. You could, yeah,
yeah,
totally.
wild.
Right? Date changes, analytics. Maybe there's results, right? Like
So,
expand
so
your mind.
So it's not just incrementing numbers.
Far from it.
It's like taking a dictionary approach.
Yeah, it's like a thesaurus, man. A thesaurus for a URL, 100%. Go in there and play with it, and you'd be
Well,
surprised.
we always talk about it, like, if you have acme.com/API v3, we know attackers are gonna try v2, v1, but they're also gonna try Corey's always saying like UAT, QA, dev, right? Like
Yep.
all these, there are freaking, dictionaries out there you can go download, right? Of
Yeah.
common API paths, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely. Tons and tons of research out there. Getting good at researching is a big part of being good at hacking and doing pen testing and stuff too, right?
I love this from Marie Gank. Whether to watch
Mergonk, yeah,
Jesse
that's
or the or the chat, I'm with you, man.
yeah, Mergonk, it's so good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. Um, yeah, so we've got this last example here is a little more even going further, right? Just to kind of drive home the point, right? Knowledge base, you can think of a million two words examples for that are things like knowledge base, customer complaints analysis. What about customer gratitude analysis? Right? There's all sorts of different things we can do here. Is there more than just comments? Are there notes? Are there any other things that are related? Ooh, let's get that out of there. All right, let's hunt. I think that's the next step.
All right, let's not, man. This is what
All
people
right.
want to see it. And by
Let's
the
do it.
way, can we fuzz to find other endpoints? Yeah, for sure. Right, Gene. This is a common thing, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there are endpoint dictionaries, right? That exist, right?
Yeah,
And
and that falls back to the layers talk I was giving earlier too, right? When I talked about the different layers of the application, layers also refer to specific text pieces of tech or third party things that are attached to the application, right? So, um, in regards to like fuzzing path traversal, um, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by chat.
what's oh, you all right?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Sorry. Yeah, so in regards to like fuzzing path traversal, yeah, you want to do that, but educate yourself. Don't just shoot random values. Go Google dork, hey, they're using these pieces of tech or ask an AI, right? Like use something that finds the stack, we'll call it that, right? I don't want to give you guys too much info because I want you to go do your own research. There are a bunch of tools out there that will like identify the stack of a website, all the different pieces that are built, that it's built on. Then you go and say, hey, this website is using this stack. Here's a bunch of examples of URLs. Can you please help me fuzz examples that are correlated between these two things or that are commonly associated with this pieces of the stack, right? And give yourself educated hunting targets. It's the recon, the research, the thinking creatively about what you're looking at is almost as important, if not more important, than knowing how to execute the vulnerability once you actually find it.
Yeah.
I would
Yep,
argue.
spot on.
Okay.
And just I wanna address Mo before the chat goes too
Yep.
far up. Any tools to add to my CI to protect me from BOLA? I do not see why we can't add some of these fuzzers to public dictionary in my own. Absolutely. This whole tool is designed to be integrated into the CI pipeline. You should be testing in the CI pipeline. You already test for QA, performance, unit. Why are you not testing for security in CI?
Yep.
Right. So 100%, right? You should be doing it. And if you were to click on the integrations on the left, there's a whole CI tab there for doing exactly that.
All right. I was gonna make you guys Google it, but Edwin's nice and gave you Wappleizer. That's one you can use to figure out the stack and things like that. Thanks, Edwin.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know about that one. I learn something every day.
Awesome. Okay. So today we're going to be taking a look at Spotify. Um, at this point, we've got about 20 minutes left, guys. So I want to really try and hit a few points that I wanted to say today um, on the, like the nuggets that I want to hand you all. First piece is really read your program guidelines very well. Understand what you are allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. The rules of your engagement are extremely important. They will dictate what sorts of tools you're allowed to use, what sorts of vulnerabilities you're allowed to look for. They will tell you what's in scope and what's out of scope. They will tell you what they don't care about. Spotify is a really nice one to look at. Klarna is one I was looking at earlier that also has this. A lot of these guys, like their response efficiency is good. One mistake a lot of new hackers make, if this is something you're interested in doing, is they're like, oh, if the response efficiency is less than 90%, I'm not going to even bother because they'll probably won't respond. No, that's not what that's a sign of. What you need to understand is that all of these programs get garbage reports all day long. People are reporting self XSS, and just non-findings or useless informational
Wow.
findings that these people are having to sift through constantly.
How many
So
how
that,
many have we gotten from the
oh, dude,
chat widget on our website?
it's got to be
Code
over 50,
code we don't even own, right? But
right?
people run
Yeah,
in and report it to us. Yeah. No,
yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And so I actually recommend people, like a lot of people like to do things like you're describing, Dan. Well, they'll come hack on like our site and try to reach out, even though we don't have an official program, right? Because they think that there's not going to be people there and there's chance for reward. But that's you're being counterintuitive to the whole idea here. Ethical hacking is about transparency. It's about the people you know. It's about the people knowing that you're hacking on them and you creating a network with them to help them make their application safer, right? That's what the purpose of it is. So when you bother them with reports that one, they didn't ask for, two, that if you had spent 3 seconds inspecting the HTML, you would know that it's a third party extension and doesn't belong to them. And three, you have no control over because you're not a bug bounty department or a triage unit or something. All you're doing is breaking your network down, right? You're ruining your reputation. You're doing the exact opposite. You should be thinking about yourself as like a pillar of ethics if this is what you want to do. If you want to talk about it, if you want to network and talk to people, if you want to be a hacker or a pen tester, you better be a pillar of ethics that's ready to stand on business. Otherwise, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
Um,
amen to that. And there are no shortcuts here, folks.
yeah,
Like we talk about this a lot. People who slam through our, I bet we already have somebody who's finished Corey's course. Why? Because they just skipped everything and went to the quiz, right? What's the point, right? Like you're here to actually learn, right? And to build your reputation. So we talk a lot about like, doing things for the right reasons, right? Being able to create your own reputation, become become a real valid member of the community. That's why we have the ambassador program, right? The ambassador program is hard to be a part of, right? Because we need people who can really demonstrate that passion and that commitment and so forth. So yeah, I mean these reports we get that are just clearly like very script kiddie based, right? There's no effort, there's no energy put into that. And so I think that's
yeah,
what you're talking about, Jesse.
100%. Yeah, like if you want to be rewarded for something in this field, it better be an actual lift because nobody's interested in paying you for a simple XSS bug that any college student could have found, especially if it's like not actually executable remotely or without sophisticated social engineering. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so jumping back into this real quickly, little things you can do to get through this stuff and understand real fast. Control F or Command F is your friend. Look for things like brute force, right? Absence of brute force countermeasures. What is this under? Following finding types are specifically excluded from bounties reports. The absence of brute force countermeasures. So they don't care if rate limiting is not there. I don't need to report that. I'm learning by spending time reading this what these people care about. All of this, they don't care. A lot of people skip this part and then they start reporting stuff. And like I just said, they don't care, right? So let's actually look at the program. Got my burp. Oh, hold on. One last piece. Always download your Burp Suite project configuration file. I'm only going to be using Burp Suite today for the sake of simplicity and just facilitating conversation with the audience. I'm not going to be opening Kali Linux and showing all of the tools that I use. That would be way too much for this. But once you have that done, you can go into Burp, go into your project settings, and actually import. Well, let's actually show you something else first. Let me show you the value of doing this before I do it. Okay. So we can see my HTTP history here. If we clear that, pull up Firefox, which I already have configured on Spotify. Let's just refresh this page and see what we get. Oh boy. That's a whole lot of network traffic for a simple homepage request, right? And we have to wonder, and then let's make it worse. Actually, let's make it even worse. Let's upstream request time out. That's fine. Let's just go to Spotify.com. I might need to log back in. Oh no, I'm good. Okay. Okay. So all I've done is refresh the homepage. How much of this do you think is in scope? How much do you think we care about? Well, that's what we just talked about. That's what our project settings are for. Spotify gave us the scope, right? So we can load project settings, find our Spotify file. Should be somewhere around here. Oop, there it is. Open that. Now we can go to our filter settings, show only in scope items, apply and close. Boom. And now I know everything in this list. It's still pretty long, thankfully. That's nice for us. We like that as a hacker. But everything in this list is in scope. I don't have to stress on whether or not I'm allowed to be looking at this, or if I find something, right? My public bug bounty profile is they are ghosts, but I don't do hunting on it. It's for networking specifically. So all right, looking for BOLA. Well, we talked about bait earlier. Here's an ID of some kind potentially. That's interesting. Let's highlight that. So we'll go interesting as orange. And now I'm going to show you the next piece I was talking about.
Tony's asking real quick, where
Yeah.
did you get the scope JSON file?
I downloaded that directly from Spotify's bug bounty
Okay,
HackerOne
got
program.
it. So they
You
actually
click on
provided
scope
that.
over here, download Burp project configuration file right here. There's also a CSV option if you want to use it in other tools. All right. Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Let's get back to Burp Suite here. And OneNote is my documentation tool of choice. I'm not going to show you guys what my actual book looks like that I use when I'm hacking, but I'm going to show you a little bit of like the mindset and methodology I used as I started developing it early on. So when I started early, the problem that I had is I would find something like this and I would immediately be very interested by the ID here, and I would start doing all of the onion peeling that I was describing earlier. Sorry, my friend Spam likely is calling me. Let me decline that really quick. I would start just going crazy on these endpoints, and that's really not that valuable, to be honest with you. Because what happens is you're going to hit a wall at some point. You're going to hit a WAF you don't know how to get by. You're going to start getting 404s and not know what to do. And then you have to come back to this giant list and go, well, what do I do next? And that's honestly both really demotivating and also like just completely rips you backwards in like your focus cycle, right? It's just debilitating. So what I started doing is I started using this highlight feature and building out my little OneNote document. And now I know orange is interesting ID in path, right? And I put it here. And then I might say something. Let's look what else we got here. Okay. From token is kind of interesting. So it's probably using one of these tokens, which means we might want to spend some time like actually decoding these and looking at them and seeing how this is, which one of these two tokens this thing is using, right? We could try doing some header surgery. And in fact, let's do that real quick. We're running low on time, so I just want to show a few different things, right? So we can send this to the repeater. Oh, I'm getting a 404 now. Well, that's interesting. Let's try a different one. How about this guy? Ooh. See how quickly this can get confusing, though? Look how much more I have to dig through here, right? And so that's why,
It looks like your background.
yeah, honestly, that's why I did it. So bug bounty, especially programs like Spotify or bigger organizations that have been around for a long time, you're going to run into a lot of this sort of thing where like, as a new person, how do I even start with this, right? Well, the answer is the more you do it, the more these things will start to actually mean something when you see them. The more time you spend on one program, which again, advice if you're planning on doing bug bounty, stick with one or two programs in the beginning, get to know them extremely well to the point that when pushes are changed, you can actually see it in the code. That's how you're going to actually start finding things, not just jumping from program to program, spamming XSS payloads like everybody does when we first start. How to download Burp Suite Pro for free. You can, if you have a company email, you can get a free trial. So that's a place to start.
So true, Randall. You can see the matrix through the code now.
Exactly. That's kind of how it becomes, man. It really is. You know, a lot of these things like, and it's not going to be all of it, right? Like pace yourself, maybe focus on one little piece that's interesting and see where else in the application you can find this CSID and determine what it means and what it's doing, right? And then you come over here and you do something like ID meaning CSID appears to be for validating that the client and user are still using the same valid session, or right, I'm just making stuff up, but You start developing all these notes, and eventually this is like a page long, and all of this has a dictionary for it, right? Is this making sense to everybody? Are you guys seeing what yeah, I don't care if you see my tokens, dude. It's a test Spotify account with it's fine. I don't, I don't care. This is all garbage data. Play with it if you want. I thought about all this before I got into it.
I love that, Rahul. Great, great, great memory there.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, you see the point of what I'm getting at here. So let's do the next piece. So okay, now how do we get a bunch of stuff to sift through? Right. Well, just like we talk about in Corey's penetration testing course or whatever, the answer is by doing stuff, by clicking on things. Here, let's see. We're at why are you not letting me sort? Oh, because I'm wait, why is it not letting me? Okay, there we go. Awesome. So we're about 492 requests total right now. We can't see all of them because our scope is filtering the ones that are out of scope, thanks to that project settings. But if we just kind of click around, maybe go to our profile, right? Kind of look at things. I don't know. Sure, address. Why not? Right. Put things in here. Put the address for my hometown. How about that? Ah. All right. You're gonna make me use a real one, but you get the idea. Let's go back here.
Just poke around, right?
Look, now we just doubled almost the amount of requests in 5 seconds that we have stuff to look through. Interesting things here. A token request of some kind. When you see posts,
Bill. I
so
didn't know
pro
what was
hackers fill in forms for tests. Yeah, honestly,
that
if we
true?
can.
That's
If we
awesome.
can, that's like efficiency is so critical as a hacker. If I can spend 12 seconds spamming random nonsense into your form and it works, I'm going to try and spend those 12 seconds every time if it saves me a minute and 30 seconds. Yeah, totally. Okay, so here's an example like of a GraphQL API, right? We can tell because it's a post request, it's passing variables in an operation name. We can see some response data here. So if you haven't read Corey's books, please read Corey's book, and then Black Hat GraphQL, another great book that I've just started reading recently that's really awesome and has a ton of great info about hacking GraphQL. If you are actually interested in entering bug bounty and having some real findings, becoming a GraphQL expert is a great way to do that, and will, in my opinion, and will lower the amount of people you're competing against because it's way more difficult than hacking against REST. It's harder to understand, and that makes the competition less. Okay. Now, you can see here I highlight like GraphQL links that I care about in yellow, for example. So we could do all these if we wanted to. Maybe we only care about the important ones, but highlight them. So the point is, when we come back later, as we scroll through, we're going to have all these little highlights, right? When I hit a wall here, I just go to my next highlight. And I take everything I learned from my last wall, and I come back to my doc, and we do stuff like this, right? New page, attack 1. And as I'm going, I say, okay, first I picked this URL, and this is what the HTTP request looked like. And the first thing I did was, right, step 1, header surgery, found that XYZ headers are not required for 200 requests, right? And I start building myself a playbook. And then every day that I come back, because like Dan always preaches, dude, hard work is a part of it. You have to come back every single day, look at this every single day, hack on this target every single day. But let's look through the lens of BOLA, right? V3, we see versions that we could be changing. We see IDs that we could be swapping that potentially fit from other users. We see, ooh, this is interesting. Ads. Oh, these are options. Okay, let me look at my GET requests. What else do we got here? Don't really want to look at JSON. I guess that's okay. What do we got here? Anybody else see anything, by the way, chat? If as I'm scrolling through these URLs, if you see anything, like even if
Well,
it's like a
I know we're getting close to the hour here,
yeah,
just but
maybe you want to
I
spend
know one of
5
the
asking
things.
questions.
Well, no, I just know that one of the things you have in mind to start rolling out are these like Discord live, like bug
Yes.
bounties.
Oh,
So,
great
what's
segue. Thank you so much.
let's talk about that.
Um, yeah, so this is something I'm working on putting together right now. If this is something that's been interesting for you guys, I want to start doing this hosted by me bi-weekly in Discord very, very soon. So, Dan, if you want to drop that or Christine that
Oh
Discord
yeah, let me
invite,
get the Discord.
um,
Here we are. If you're not in Discord,
yeah, please join. Let me hold on a second here.
I'm gonna grab that URL in case it doesn't work for folks, or the clicker doesn't.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing this exact thing that you're seeing here, like, but instead of trying to just be more explanatory, it'll be like an actual group hunt where we are trying to find bugs. We are digging a little bit deeper than the surface level. Um, and it's going to be like an ongoing group thing, right? I'm trying to help basically people build the exact routines and methodologies and discipline that I'm talking about. Like, come jump on a program with me every 2 weeks. Let's make progress together. We can talk about, how the APIsec product is involved with that. Maybe we can find some bug bounty programs that we connect the scanner to. It should be fun.
Well,
Habib
and
Kareem
we
is
can
in
make
chat.
it.
He's going to be helping me. It's going to be great.
And if you got something to share, like, it's not just the Jesse show, right? Like,
Totally.
you can share, like, how did you approach a bug bounty? What did you find? What was the techniques, the tools, the approaches that you took? But this is going to be, I think, a really cool program if you're into
Yeah.
bug bounties or you want to learn. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And talking Discord, if you're not familiar, I'll just plug the ambassador program really quick. Our ambassador program is basically a group of professionals that love AppySec as much as I do and want to make the AppySec world a better place by collaborating, talking about hard hitting subjects, understanding the most difficult aspects of application security, and being able to educate others on them real time. It's super collaborative. We have a CTF team now. If you want to join as an ambassador, you can go to appysecuniversity.com and go to the ambassador page in the resources tab.
I'll
Um,
grab the link.
yeah, and just to preface that, it's not just like a join up and you're in sort of thing. This is a program that's built for like AppySec cheerleaders and people who love our community and want to be part of our family, right? Like, I bring in people who are in our Discord and are active talking, people who are on LinkedIn sharing events, and not only our events, but their own events, right? Like, you should be pushing yourself too. And we're here to help lift you up. We've got,
Yeah.
we want to do the same. We all
Well,
scratch
I
each
mean,
other's
I
backs
think
around here.
how many people have gotten jobs at AppySec because of their
At
passion
least
and their
three I
engagement?
can think of off the top of my head.
At
Yeah.
least 3 and then more, like, on
Actually
a
six because of
contract
the
basis.
other
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
And who knows? Like, I would love to know, like, success stories from folks. We got a message the other day, somebody used our scanner on a bug bounty, got paid, right? Like,
Yep.
I'm sure they brought their expertise to bear there, right? But,
Totally.
like, you know what doesn't work is just like, phoning it in, right? Folks that are collecting certs, I kind of drone on about this, but it's you're not helping yourself, right? You're
Yeah.
not advancing anything. It takes more than certs to get a job or to make a name for
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Yeah, I always say it doesn't matter how many certs or skills you have when the door opens and you don't know how to talk.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna hit the hour here, so I'm gonna just put one thing back up on the screen, which is our new course.
Oh yeah,
If you
got
could
that.
go pull that up.
Bam.
There we go. Yeah, and I'll throw the link in the chat for those that can't click on that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to go deep into this very powerful tool, you can learn from the master, from Corey himself. It's about a 90-minute course, so not too long, but it will go through everything that Jesse has just described, and how you can automate it. Really get put technology to work for you, right? It's not the easy button, right? Like, you still got to be smart and know the techniques and what you're looking at and interpret results, but it's gonna multiply you, right? It's gonna give you all that coverage, all that that attack simulation. So, please, everyone, go and check it out. Give it a try. If you like it, we'd love to hear about it. If you don't like it, we even more want to hear about it.
Yeah,
How can we make it even better?
yeah.
We're right at the hour. Jesse, any parting thoughts?
I'm just gonna rapid fire these last few things. Someone said try Kaido as well. Agree. Open source Burp, but not for newbies. Uh, Question: if we're gonna have loads of repeater tabs, is it efficient to use Postman? Sometimes Postman can help with running collections and things and hitting multiple endpoints at once. I use both tools a lot. Repeat the book name. Hacking APIs by Corey Ball and Black Hat GraphQL by the name is escaping me, but it's
Alex.
yeah, something or other.
Oh gosh. Yeah, slipping my mind right now.
Mergonk, still see you chatting. Thank you for still being here. That's really awesome. And I think that's all of the questions I missed. Yes, this session's recorded. It'll be on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll have it up. We'll have it up later today, and we're gonna do more of these, right? So
Yeah.
if you're up for it, Jess, maybe we can grab Dave or
Yeah,
some other folks
definitely.
from the community.
Definitely. Please join Discord and let us know what sort of, or even on LinkedIn, let us know what sorts of things you guys want to see. Like we've done BOLA, we're going to do a product one. Should I do RBAC?
Yeah,
What other little topics do you guys want solutions to or info
yeah,
on?
absolutely. Yeah,
All right.
we definitely love to hear what would be interesting for the next one. So with that, folks, I know we all got stuff to do. It's late for some people. It's middle of the night for others. Jess and I got day jobs to go do.
That's it.
Dude, thank you as always. You're amazing, and
Thanks, man.
yeah, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.